Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to cook with me. I hope your kitchen is ready and I guess you're hoping you're ready for making some 10-layer dip tonight. Now, some of you may have already heard about 7-layer dip. That's definitely where this recipe has come from, but in true Ashley style, I've added 3 extra layers so that we can either make it a bit more of a meal or turn it from a snack into a meal full stop. So I want to hear who's on tonight. Please let me know who's in the kitchen with you. That's one of my favorite things to know, who's cooking together. And also if you've made a version of this dip before. There's a few different variations of layered dips. Some of you may have seen, more of a seafood based kind of with cream cheese layered dip idea. This one is much more traditionally Mexican, if you will. And just while everyone's logging in, I just wanted to give you a quick little story about, I guess, where this dip has come from in terms of my history. It was definitely kind of a staple favorite of my family growing up. So those of you that I hear say all the time, you end up cooking the same thing over and over and over. This was one of those dishes for me as a kid. And although it was a bit of a trait, it was also something that Mum could whip together really quickly because, albeit back then, bless her, we did, best with what we knew at the time. The refried beans were out of the tin, the sour cream was from the shops, the salsa was in a jar, and everything was pretty much ready to go. Grate some cheese in that case, add some tomatoes. I don't even think we did olives at that point, and we had a bit of a dip that everyone loved. So to the point where when my brother was in his early 20s, I remember Mum making it for a bit of a road trip that him and his buddies went on, and I don't even think it lasted the first half an hour of the trip. They sat it on the console in the middle seat, and everyone just devoured in from back seats, front seats. And it was gone pretty quickly. So it is one of my favorites, but like I said, I want to show you how to make it a little bit differently so that we can add a bunch more nutrition. And this is a really great opportunity to take advantage of a whole bunch of different variety in your diet and getting more sources of diversity or diverse sources of nutrition into your world. Whether you're sneaking that into the salsa so that no one can see it, or whether you're sprinkling them on top so that they can either be seen and enjoyed or picked out if necessary. This is a great way to do it, and lots of things we can do in the dip. Okay, so if you've got all of your ingredients out, let's jump straight in. I don't know if this is going to be your full dinner tonight, or if you're going to make this and take it to a party tomorrow, or tonight on a Wednesday. Sounds like our neighbors are having a bit of a Wednesday night party. So when it comes to this as a meal or as a snack, like I said before, because of the other layers that I've added in, this can be considered a complete meal. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that as we go. So let's get started. We're actually going to be making 3 recipes within one tonight. So because I'm not going to maybe recommend to you that you go and just get sour cream from the shops, I want to show you the dairy-free alternative so you have options, and likewise with the salsa. Now, I understand that a cooked salsa that comes out of a jar is delicious. This is what I call a fresh salsa, and probably for me the main reason why it's one of my favorite foods is because it takes, I was going to say 2 seconds, but maybe 20 seconds all up to whip up a fresh batch of salsa. And generally speaking, it's from ingredients that most people will keep on hand, like tomatoes, onions, bit of garlic, maybe a little bit of something spicy if you like a spicy salsa, but really easy. Okay, so we're going to make the salsa, the cashew sour cream, and then we're going to layer them up and we're going to have the dip. Hopefully on the shopping list you've also seen that we're going to need something to eat it with. So hopefully you've got some chips, crackers. You could possibly chop up carrot sticks and do that. If you didn't have any chips, you could even slice cucumbers on the round. So you've got like cucumber chips. That's getting a bit adventurous. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with the cashew sour cream. Now, for those of you that haven't ever seen this before, it's actually quite amazing to see how versatile cashews can be, particularly because they will go full white. So you can turn this into a cream, you can use it to thicken soups and sauces, you can even turn it into an icing to ice a cake if we go sweet with it. This can also be turned into like a cheesecake icing for on top of a carrot cake or something like that. So cashews are one of my absolute favorite things. I hope you're able to eat cashews. If not, that's for another day. We'll talk about some other alternatives. So today I want to show you a cashew sour cream, super simple. Again, one of my little ways we're going to keep adding in, and this is a concept, guys, I'm trying to bring across to you, is the idea of what can I just sneak in to improve it just that little bit more when it comes to quality. So you'll see in the recipe for the cashew sour cream, I've actually added in a little bit of probiotic liquid. Totally not necessary, guys. If you do not have that, do not stress, it's all good. I've just got a little bit of my kombucha from my tap, my continuous brew. I'm just going to put a little bit of that in. It just gives it kind of that nice acidity that we want in a sour cream. So it's just a slight little touch, a little bit of added benefit on the bacteria, but you do not need to stress about that one. Okay, so as far as the cashew sour cream goes, You could do it in your food processor so that you don't have to dirty two different equipment. I'm going to do it in my blender, and then I'm going to do the salsa separately in the food processor, only because I kind of want to show you the difference. Basically what happens in the blender is that it's going to get a lot more smooth. So I'm actually going to take advantage of that fact. You can definitely do the cashew cream in a food processor. The only difference is if it's not a Thermomix, you'd want to make sure it has enough power, otherwise you're still going to have little chunks of cashews in it. So if you haven't got a Thermomix, I'd say make the cashew cream in a bullet blender, like a not a Vitamix, a NutriBullet, or maybe a stick blender, but it definitely, to get it that really smooth, creamy texture without any bumps in it, we kind of want a high-powered blender. If you are doing it in the Thermomix, you probably want to double the batch of cashew sour cream, because I find it's not enough around the blades to actually get a good blend. So just double it. You can freeze it if you'd like. You can turn it into dip in the next couple of days. Like I said, thicken soups with it. But I'm going to use the blender. And then we're going to need your soaked cashews. If you've got the probiotic liquid, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of lemon juice as well. You don't necessarily have to have both the lemon juice and the probiotic liquid, but I do find that they have a very different profile in something as simple as this. Not a big deal, but if you've got the advantage of having the lemon, then we will do that as well. Okay, and you'll just need a little bit of water, not a lot, and the reason why I haven't given you a measurement on that is because it's going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on your machine. It's going to depend on how long you've soaked your cashews and how much they've absorbed the water. So we're just going to drain the soaking water out of there. If you've used hot water, like I called for in the recipe, just be careful not to hurt yourself like this. I just did cold water for longer, but hot water in this case is absolutely fine, a bit quicker. Okay, and if you haven't already soaked your cashews, you can get away with it. You'll just need, if you've got a strong blender, you can get away with not soaking them, but otherwise we'll just let them sit. Okay, so cashews straight into the blender. Extra protein we're building into this. And then we're just gonna need a little bit of lemon juice. So specifically I've said about a tablespoon of lemon juice. That's generally speaking half a lemon, depending on how juicy it is. That looks like we're gonna get about a tablespoon out of that, so that's perfect. So half a lemon is about a tablespoon of juice. Make sure we don't waste any little bits. There we go. And then for the probiotic powder, liquid, sorry, I've said also a tablespoon. That's a little bit more than a tablespoon, so I'll go a bit easy. And like I said before, some of you may have it in the fridge as a probiotic liquid drink that you're having. You can be using a kefir, kombucha, or sometimes you can buy the specific brands of probiotic liquids. Here in Australia, there's a few. One's called BioBubble, and there's a couple other versions there. Again, it's just another opportunity to get some probiotics into you. Okay, how's everyone going? Everyone's settled in to the recipe. Welcome, welcome Kate, welcome Lorraine and Neve, thank you. Can't use lemon or probiotics. Do I increase the vinegar or just leave them out? Okay, good question, Neve. I wouldn't increase the vinegar just yet. Just add a little bit of vinegar. Vinegar's very acidic compared to lemon. So just start with a little and kind of taste it as you go, because you don't necessarily want it tasting like, you don't want to be able to pick the vinegar. So just kind of go by taste and maybe measure as you do so that you know for next time, Neve. So yes, sorry to hear that you can't use either of those. Yeah, vinegar's okay, but you're going to need much less of it. All right, now salt, about a half a teaspoon. Again, that's kind of dependent on the person. You could do a touch more or less. If you are going to be using this obviously as a sweet icing later, go a little bit less, and then you can add that separately. Okay, so that's pretty much, oh, we need the 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. Now I could do that, or this has pretty much gone to vinegar, so I'm just going to add a little bit extra of that for good measure. And then a little bit of water. Now, to give you an indication of how much water, like I said, it really depends on the machine. I've started off with 2 cups here. Let's see how much we end up needing. I'm going to go really easy first. If we put too much water in, and again, depending on the machine, it can just swirl it around as opposed to really blend it smooth. So we want to try, whenever we want something to be creamy, creamy smooth in a blender, put less liquid off the start so it can really break it down, and then add your liquid just to achieve the right consistency as you go. Okay, let's blend that one up. Super easy. All right, now I know that was a bit loud and annoying, I'm sorry. That was 35 seconds. Now, I don't know if you can tell on there, but there's still a bit of chunkiness to this. There's still just a bit of texture in that. So I just want to show you the difference, if we can blend that for another 35 seconds, how this turns now to that smooth texture that we're looking for from a sour cream. And as far as thickness goes, I'm actually going to try to keep it that thick. We could put a touch more water in, depending on what your use was, but I think it's blending fairly well with the stick, so we can keep it nice and thick. Okay, well, look at the difference there. Okay, so zoom right in on that again. So now we've got this smooth cream, basically, which is exactly what we're looking for. So there's our cashew sour cream. Now have a taste. Cashews are actually quite sweet, you'll notice. And it's going to depend a little bit. If you used roasted salted cashews versus raw cashews, is going to be a big difference. So in the future, if you use this to make dips with, you may choose the roasted cashew variety, but if we want to choose that sour cream feel, the raw is probably the best option. So on its own, it may not be something you devour on its own, like you wouldn't probably devour a thing of sour cream on its own, maybe you would. But once this is in the dip, I think you'll find that it's going to achieve the effect of that creamy, rich, delicious layer that most of us look to from a sour cream. So now taste it. If you need a little bit more acidity, that's another option too that you can add in. Okay, Neve, here we go. Substituting half a cup of the cashews for sunflower seeds. Yes, that's an excellent idea, Neve. And when you say tablespoon, are you meaning 15 or 20 mils? Yes, I do mean 15 mils. I'm going to stick with the majority of the world on that one. I know Australia is technically 20 mils, but I've purchased many tablespoons in Australia that are still 15 mils. So I'm going to stick with the most of the world on that one. And not a problem with your questions. You're probably asking questions that everyone else would wish to be asking if they just don't want to do it. So thank you. That's great for the questions. Okay, so definitely have a taste of that, but otherwise we're going to put that to the side. If you're using the same machine now for the salsa, obviously we'll have to transfer that out into another bowl. But then we'll move on to the next layer. So now when it comes to the refried layer, the bean layer on the bottom, there are organic refried beans. So if you've got that option, you are more than welcome to use them as a little bit of a time saver, provided, you know, you still check out the ingredients. Even if it's organic, just get in the habit of just, whenever it's got an ingredient label, check it. And otherwise, if you don't have access to those, or you're in a pinch, you can use any other form of bean. Now this is a bit of an experiment for me. I've never tried these ones before. These are organic chili beans. Now they haven't been refried, they haven't been turned into kind of a paste, but I'm gonna use them for blending. And I'm gonna kind of turn them into a refried bean. You can do the same with a tin of black beans, a tin of cannellini beans. It'd be great as an opportunity to get, say, kidney beans into you if you're not often having them. And the benefits of the beans, in addition to the rice that we're going to use, is going to help complete the essential amino acid profile of it. Now, this is not required. This is a very big kind of topic in the world of nutrition and things, that the idea you have to combine proteins in order for it to be beneficial to the body. It's not 100% of the story, but it is saying that if we combine a bean with a grain, the essential amino acid that the bean is missing, the rice has, and the one that the rice is missing, the bean has. So when we put them together, we more efficiently use the protein at once. Not super big deal for you to concern yourself with, but just a bit of interesting information. Okay, so whatever beans you're using, in this case, we're just going to drain off the liquid of this one. You can keep a little bit of that, so let's just pop that straight in before it drains completely. In this case, because this one's flavored, but if you're using ones that you need to rinse, then you can do that. I'll save a little bit of that. Okay. Now, a little bit of a hack, a little bit of a nutrition hack. I try to sneak sprouts in to anything that I can. So I happen to have some mung bean sprouts that I've just made in the last couple of days, or grown. So I'm going to sneak some of them into this layer just because I can hide them in this flavor. And for me, like I said, I try to sneak them in everywhere because sprouts have more nutrition per calorie than any food known to man. So especially if you're growing your own and they're fresh and they're delicious, sneak them into this layer because you'll get away with it. Now, if you're using plain beans, like a tin of black beans or a tin of kidney beans, we're going to need to add a little bit of something to that because it's going to be quite bland. So as I've said in the recipe, you can add a little drizzle of olive oil, maybe a touch of salt. If you happen to have already your own Cajun mix of spices done up because you've got a bit of a flow on happening in your kitchen, we can add a little bit of Cajun spices as well. What makes up a Cajun spice? Differing opinions, differing recipes around the world, but for the most part, it's paprika, garlic, a little bit of oregano. Some people put cumin in. There can be different like onion powders and cayenne powders, but those are kind of what we're looking for, roughly in the sense that it's a Mexican traditional dish. Okay, so that's it for that one. I'm just going to blend that into a paste so that that can be the first layer. If you wanted it to be super smooth, then your blender would be a better option for this one. Okay, and because we're going to need this machine to make our salsa, that's pretty much done. It's just created bean mush. Doesn't really look that appealing. Sorry if you've got our cockatoos in the background. Okay, and so depending on the texture, you'll know kind of what you need to do here. But this is fairly thin as far as the texture goes compared to a thickened refried bean. But not a worry. We're just going to start out with our first layer onto the platter. So I didn't really mention that before, but you're going to need either a platter like this, or say, for example, just 2 dinner plates, or if you're going to go to the effort of making separate individual ones, I admire your energy. I don't think I've ever gone to that effort, but in a kid's lunchbox, it could be the difference between getting them off bread. If this is a favorite of theirs, you make up some little ones and then you can send this to school with a few ice packs around it. That would be, wow, they'd be like the envy of everyone around them. Okay. And guys, I just wanted to touch quickly, I do get a lot of questions about beans and people that are, I guess, afraid of them or find that they get a bit of wind when it comes to eating beans. There's a little bit more to that than I can explain all in one go here, but basically beans are full of fiber, and our large intestine, the good bacteria in our large intestine requires fiber in order to maintain a healthy biota, a healthy organism, microbiome of your gut bacteria. So in order to do that, we need to be eating enough fiber. Now, when you eat beans, generally speaking, it's more fiber than most people are used to getting in their daily diet. So the good bugs that you do have in your gut, especially if your gut's a little bit out of balance, which most people's guts are nowadays in our culture, if they're a little bit out of balance, then all of a sudden your gut gets this amazing dose of incredible food, which the Western world calls prebiotics. It's another word for fiber. So it gets this huge dose of fiber, and all of a sudden it's just like, party's on. It's got all this amazing food. And the byproduct of those good bacteria being really happy is extra carbon dioxide, extra release of air, basically, or gas, as we call it. So that can be a bit uncomfortable for people, but basically there's a few ways that you can rectify that. You can just start to incorporate more probiotics into your diet. You can ease in gently. So just start with little bits here and there, but do keep doing it and making sure that your regularity is working and everything like that. But for the most part, most people can become tolerant of it, can become less and less windy as you improve the state of your gut. That's basically the moral of that story. So we'll work on that. Not everyone then can always tolerate them, especially if you've got sort of an underlying thing going on or an existing disease or something. But for the most part, we just got to ease in gently. Okay, that's layer number one. Now I'm not even going to clean this. I've just cleaned it with the spatula. And now we're going to make the salsa straight into here. So again, really easy. Just takes a couple of extra seconds to put all your fresh ingredients in instead of popping open a jar. Okay, so here I've got, it's actually about 650 grams of tomatoes. I know I've only called for 500, but that's okay. The recipe is just a guide. So whatever you've got for tomatoes, we can put in. And then hopefully you'll have a little bit of extra left over so you can have that in another form later on. All right. Okay, so then salsa, tomatoes in. Now you could get a little bit pickier about this. The big ones I might just chop into 4 just to make sure we don't get super mush in one case and then big chunky pieces. But we'll put those guys in there as is. And for those of you that have maybe never made a salsa at home, I hope this can wow you. As in, I hope you can see how quick and easy it can be. Literally, let's say, friends are coming over and you go, oh, I just want to feed them something, but I don't know what to give them. Possibly you can look in your fridge and pull together a quick salsa. You can even get creative and add corn or black beans or anything like that. So nothing complicated. I've just quartered the tomatoes, chucked them in. Next up, if you want to put in some capsicum, you can. You do not have to put that into the salsa. Otherwise, maybe a little bit of green chili or some jalapenos. I happen to have some fresh from my garden, which I feel very lucky about. These guys have just been growing beautifully on the tree, on the little plant. So I'm going to put some of them in. There is a belief in sort of the Indian culture that it's best to eat green chilies instead of red chilies because they're less aggravating to the digestion and less disrupting of the mind. So just a little tidbit of information I find interesting. Okay, when it comes to chilies, please be very careful. When you cut it open, it's only the cut surface that's going to sting your finger or put the oils onto your skin, which will then get transferred if you happen to accidentally touch your eye. That's where we have the issues or the burning of the skin. So some people may have tried to make hot sauce in the past and they've learned the hard way that you need to wear gloves if you're handling chilies. Now in the case of just using 1 or 2, we can be very careful and just try not to touch the open cut surface of the chili. Sometimes it's a bit easier said than done. And if this is being too finicky, you can always grab a little spoon and do that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna put just the 1 chili in for now because I might have someone having this that's gonna like it a little bit milder. So notice how I'm just trying not to touch the open surface of the chili. It saves me wasting a pair of gloves just for cutting 1 chili. There's really creative ways you can get around that, like kind of, cutting a steak. Okay, so we've got our chili in. Let's put a bit of garlic. Now let's say, like I said before, you had your flow on happening in the kitchen, and let's say last night or the night before you happened to have a bunch of veggies go in the oven for roast veggies, and you thought to yourself, the oven's on, what else can I chuck in the oven while that's on? And you found a couple cloves of garlic or a whole head of garlic, so you put that in, a couple other veggies, and then today you go to make your salsa and you go, oh, I've got those wonderful roasted garlic puree in the fridge, thanks to that other night that I had that forethought. And then you're rocking because, oh my gosh, salsa with a bit of roasted garlic in it, you'll never go back. Even though the tomatoes are not being cooked, if you've got that cooked roasted garlic, it just softens the flavor and makes it absolutely exquisite. So if that hasn't been your last couple of days to make roasted garlic like me, then let's use a little bit of raw garlic. However, be very careful with using raw garlic because it's going to get stronger as it sits. When I say careful, I just mean taste-wise. It's obviously good for you if you can have more garlic in there. So I'm just going to use carefully that sort of half a clove. This is probably even going to be a bit much, but I don't think I have any appointments tomorrow, so I'm happily going to just eat it and enjoy the garlic. All right. Garlic now, lemon or lime, up to you. Traditionally, salsa I think is best with lime, so I'm going to go that one. If you've got lemon, that's absolutely fine. In the case with Neve, and you can't do lemon or lime, we'll just leave it out in this case. I wouldn't put vinegar into the salsa necessarily. You might get enough acidity from the tomatoes if you can have those. So, okay, so let's start with about half a lime if it's really juicy. If not, go the whole one. I think that'll be good. All right. And then we're going to need some fresh herbs, some olive oil, salt, and another question. Here we go. No tomato or capsicum. Can I go all cucumber like a salsa verde? Yes. Yes, give that a shot. What else could you add in without the capsicum or tomato? Yeah, I think cucumber can be good. Can you do onion, Neve? So could you do like cucumber and onion? If you wanted to get creative, you could put a bit of pineapple through that or mango as another option, just to kind of change it up a bit, but possibly not the mango with the beans. That might be a little bit flavor disruptive. All right, now the onion, I've called for one small onion. If you don't love it, just put less in. If you like it nice and oniony, go a bit more. And it's pretty much as simple because we're gonna let the machine do the work. Quarters is probably fine, so we'll chuck that in. Okay, bit of salt. Most of this is going to get drained into the liquid, so we can go easy on the salt, maybe just half a teaspoon for now. And if the dish needs more salt, we'll have to add that to a layer that not going to get drained out. All right, a little bit of olive oil and some fresh herbs. So you can go a good drizzle of that one. And whatever you've got for fresh herbs, it'll change your salsa accordingly. I'm going to put in, let's do a little bit of coriander because it's starting to go to seed. And just been loving my garden lately, especially after this bit of rain that we've had. But whatever you've got for fresh herbs, even a bit of basil, bit of oregano if you wanted. Traditionally speaking, for this type of dish, it would be coriander. Okay, so if you've never seen it before, this is what coriander looks like once it starts to go to seed. So it starts to get really fine leaves instead of the big fluffy leaves like this one, which you're probably used to seeing for coriander. It starts to get really fine and these beautiful flowers. So, and they actually taste pretty good. They can be a little bit bitter, so just heads up on that one. All right, so let's chuck in some coriander leaves. Thank you, garden. Oh, you just think about the different level of nutrition at this point that you're getting into, rather than, you know, a cooked preserved salsa. Yes, there's still merit in that, there's still benefit, but think about the difference of getting to have a nice raw, fresh salsa, especially if you're using anything from your garden. Anything, any little bit will be amazing and better. And we'll just put in a couple leaves of parsley just for good measure. There we go. Okay, I probably don't need all this amount. See, look, it's that fresh. I still have extra protein running around my cutting board. They're not going to go in, and on my arms. Okay. Alrighty, so let's blend that guy up. And then what you are going to need is your strainer again. So if you've used it for the beans, let's give it a little quick wash. And we're going to need to strain the salsa. Now, the reason for this is because it's a fresh salsa. So if it was a cooked salsa, they're going to be cooking it down and simmering so that all of the extra liquid evaporates. But in a fresh salsa, we're not going to be cooking it down, so we're going to strain it, but we're definitely not going to be getting rid of it. I'd actually love you to just drink it. Those of you that are having a bit of a party tonight and using this as a snack layer dip, you might feel the need to put a bit of vodka with it and have it as a Bloody Mary. That seems to be a common comment when people taste this liquid that comes out of this. But let's put it on and we'll blitz it. Now, depending on what machine you're using, it could vary a bit in time. If you're using a traditional food processor, just use the blitz button or the pulse button and pulse it a few times until you get the right texture. There's no magic number here. It's about texture. Whatever your desired consistency of salsa is what we're after. All right. Now in the Thermomix, if that's what you're using, I'm gonna go about speed 7 for probably 2 seconds. Okay, and we're probably gonna need to go a little bit longer. So let's just have a look at that. So we still have quite a bit of chunkiness to that. I like it a bit finer, so I'm gonna go a little bit longer, another couple of seconds. If ever, try to err on the side of caution and go less time, because if you go too much, you'll have salsa sauce. So this is still good. We've got a nice little bit of chunkies there, and we're just gonna let that sit now in the sieve or in the strainer so that we can get the thicker bits for the dip, and we'll save the liquid for enjoying. If you're not going to drink it tonight or today while you're doing this recipe, you can keep it in the fridge for a day or two. You could use it, well, as a matter of fact, if you're making guacamole, it's one of the best flavor additions you can add to guacamole. So that would be something I would recommend if you happen to have nice ready avocados. Mine are not ready tonight, otherwise I'd be using it in that. All right, so there is our salsa, and it's straining over a bowl. Like I said, don't want you to waste those precious liquids that are coming out of there. And now, just until we get the desired consistency or texture, I'm just gonna let it kind of stir around until the liquids drain out. You'll see as it sits, even after we take it out of the strainer, that the liquid will continue to come out of the tomatoes as the salt kind of sits in and amongst the tomatoes. So that's all right. It's gonna mean potentially a little bit of extra liquid's gonna build up in your dish, but that's okay. So we'll press a little bit of that out. And then I would love for you to have a taste of that delicious liquid down the bottom. And this is going to form the best soup base. You can add this to a chili, you could add this to your spaghetti bolognese. It just is the most amazing, flavorful, delicious kind of addition to any dish that can handle that tomato base. Oh, that on ice is just a yummy appetizer, especially if you've used a little bit of chili, a little bit of kick. So good. So please don't let that go to waste. Use it. That's where the flavor magic is. It just doesn't belong in a dip where we need thickness. Okay. Alrighty. So coming back to this one, we can now do the layers in different ways. The next layer that I'd say to put on here was going to be the rice. So we've got all of our bits and pieces pretty much made. Now it goes pretty quickly. We're just going to start layering it up and then cutting things as we go. How is everyone going? Are we caught up? Excellent. Welcome, Jane. Hello, Denise. Hi, Monique. Could you simmer down the salsa, tomato and capsicum base, of course, for thicker texture, or would it not work? Yes, Neve, you could. The only disadvantage is you'll probably need to let it fully cool before you make this dish. So there's going to be quite a bit of extra time. If you had done that yesterday or the day before, then absolutely. And especially if you'd frozen a batch, or you had a batch properly canned in jars in your pantry or fridge, definitely. So you can use this with the cooked salsa by all means. As a matter of fact, I was going to show you. The other day I did have a surplus of tomatoes, so I just I just stewed them down with a bit of onion and a bit of salt and I think a bit of olive oil. And I didn't really know what was going to come of them, so I've just frozen them. And they'll either go into spaghetti bolognese or pasta sauce or salsa in the future. And I still have some in the fridge. So what I'm going to do is probably add in a little bit of that to this salsa. Well, I could do now, but I guess if I had extra salsa, I would add that in just to kind of make it go a bit further with that rich kind of simmered down look that you're probably talking about. Okay, so on top of this, we're going to put the leftover rice. Now, I get so many questions about using leftover rice. And is it safe, and is it okay, and is it good for you? And I just wanted to clear that up. Now, when rice is dried, so when it comes to you, basically in the form that you buy it, it will potentially have a bacteria on the shell of the uncooked rice that can be problematic if we treat it in the wrong way. So when it comes to leftover rice, the scare that they put out was to say that you can have this bacteria if you eat leftover rice, so don't eat leftover rice and don't ever make extras. The thing with that is they didn't tell you the full story. So if you know what you're doing and you're not being silly about it, then you don't have to worry about that. Now, the only way that that bacteria can be a problem, even if it was on that rice before you cooked it, because it doesn't necessarily cook out, they say, if you're just boiling rice, it's not hot enough to kill that bacteria. So the only way that's going to become a problem is if you have let your cooked rice sit out at room temperature for, you know, an hour or two before putting it in the fridge. So that's the only time it could become a problem. And then it's only if that bacteria happened to be on the rice that would become a problem. So provided you refrigerate your rice fairly soon after cooking, I would not worry about it. It's just that little bit of precaution that you can take, that little bit of knowledge. As soon as you have that knowledge, it's no longer this big media issue that they just want to address your attention to. So, okay, so we've got our layer of either mince or rice. Let's put some salsa on top of that one. You could do either or, order salsa and then cashew cream, or cashew cream and then salsa. So up to you. Now, the easiest way I find to do this is to kind of dollop it around rather than just put one big pile in the middle, because then you'll end up with a lot of mixture between layers and a bit of layer blending look. So let's try to kind of dollop it around and then we'll spread it out after that. Okay. Okay, now you might want to use the back of a spoon, you could use your spatula, but rather than just smearing it all into each other, we kind of just want to spread it out so we keep those layers roughly separate. Nothing too complicated there. Okay, looking good already. Hopefully you guys are getting the nice smell over there as well of salsa and okay. Okay, that's done, that one. Next up, we can put our layer of cashew cream. So let's get that out. If you really love spicy things and you happen to have hot sauce in your fridge, and it's a decent hot sauce, you could mix that through your salsa as well. One thing I will say about heat, it's generally a common disappointment I have when I bite into this, is that the heat is gone. So I've thought that I've put enough spiciness in there, but by the time I dip into it, the next day even, it's completely neutralized. So I'm not sure if that's an effect of having, like, there being fat in the dish and then the fat neutralizes the spice. But if you like it spicy, you're going to have to add more than you think to that dish to achieve it. Okay. Now, with this one, you may end up having a little bit of extra cashew cream, depending on how thick you like it. So again, same idea. Let's just kind of dollop it around until we can spread it thin. And this is a good example of why we don't want to add more or too much liquid to the cashew cream when you blend it, because this is already quite thin as it is. And all I ended up adding was half a cup, just under half a cup of water to those cashews. Okay. So I like a good little bit of cream there, so I'm going to add the rest of that one. Okay. will help the dish go a bit further too. I'll save a bit for toast tomorrow morning. All right, so let's just spread that one out without trying to get too much mixing between the layers. Sometimes a little bit easier said than done. If you've got any kids helping in the kitchen, this can be something they can help with. Just teach them how to do that. Okay, so there's our layer number 4. Now, last but not least, as far as the cream layers go, is the guacamole layer. And like I said, I haven't actually got suitable avocados at the moment to make that with. So I'm actually going to slice my avocados and lay whatever, the little bit that I do have on there, on my section. So if you have got some nice ripe avocados, I'll just try and show you a little quick trick in terms of a way to mash them a little bit easier, just to save you a little bit of effort. So when you cut into your avocado, and again, this is not fully perfectly ripe, when you cut through it, cut it in half as per usual, open it up. We'll take out the seed, and then try and find a knife that's rounded. So this is going to cut straight through the skin, and that one with the rounded tip is going to be a little bit safer. So you cut through the avocado, and we're just trying to cut lines in one direction, fairly close together. And basically what we're going to do is kind of pre-mash it inside the skin, just to save a little bit of time and effort. Once you've gone that way, then you can go the opposite way. Again, just saving a little bit of energy. And then if you want to continue going, you can go diagonal. And you see that we're going to start to get this kind of natural, easy mashing without having to actually sit it in a bowl and get out the potato masher or a blender. Now, this is certainly not perfect. If you've got a nice mushy avocado already, then this is going to be much better. But because I'm working with a fairly firm avocado here, I'm going to call that good. And then you just get a spoon and scoop it out. And hopefully, if we've done it right, we can kind of sprinkle it over. So this is a bit of a workaround. It's not perfect, it's not ideal. It'd be nice to put a nice thick layer of creamy, delicious guac on here. But if this is what we've got to work with, then we will work with it like that. So even if they're a little bit underripe, it can still work. Okay, next one. Rounded knife. If you're working with a sharp knife and that's the only one you've got, flip it over and cut with the back of the knife, the top of the knife. So at least you're less likely to cut yourself as you go through, especially if in this case it's an unripe avocado, or a slightly underripe avocado, that is. Okay. There are some avocados where the skin is just going to be too thin to do this. So please use this very carefully, very mindfully, and not for children, please. Okay, in one direction, let's go another one. So just a little bit of a dish's savings, that's all. Slightly different texture. We'll give it a good little mash, and a spoon. And again, depending on the avocado, sometimes they'll oxidize faster than other ones. So if you needed to, if you knew this dip wasn't going to be getting eaten straight away, you could now just sprinkle a bit of lemon juice over it. But you wouldn't probably necessarily need to worry about that because we're going to be putting other things on top. So up to you. The benefit of doing a proper guacamole is that the lemon juice will be evenly throughout and it'll keep it greener a little bit better than this way. Okay, there's our avocado layer as a makeshift workaround, if you will. There's always a workaround. And I know it might not always be easy in the very moment, but please, if ever you feel you've completely stuffed a recipe, don't throw it out. Just message me on Facebook or send me an email or something. Hopefully we'll get it straight away, or send me a text message. But there's always a workaround. So I really don't like seeing food go to waste, especially when we could have turned it into something different and celebrated the accidental stuff up. Okay. All right, we're getting very close. So now we can put on some freshly cut tomatoes if you'd like. If you feel you have enough in your salsa, you can skip that step. Maybe you want to add something else. If you wanted to get really creative, we could even be putting some sauteed eggplant or zucchini on here. So we can do fresh tomatoes. I'm going to put on some corn, the shallots, and some olives to finish us off. So that's going to make me, I guess, a 9-layer dip. I want to see the record. I bet you some of you are going to achieve more than 10, and I'd love to hear how that goes. Okay, how are we going? Denise. Tom just asked if we can come over to your house. Yes, please, Tom. I'd love to see you guys again. Yes, anytime. Come cook with me in the kitchen, Tom. Can we do a Tom and Ashley cook with me? And then we'll do a Dea and Ashley cook with me. I would love to. So yes, please, come over. I'll see you in 3 hours. All right, so let's get some shallots onto the top of there. Now, I find with shallots, we're just wanting mostly the green bits. That doesn't mean you throw away the white bits. They're going to be used in another recipe for something else. But because it's going to be quite powerful as the white part of the shallot on top of here. So we're just going to stick to the green. So in order to maximize your time, we can bunch that up by cutting it in half and adding to it. So we're going to cut down our time in preparing the shallots. And these ones are nice and delicate, so I don't have to be too picky about thickness, but I'm going to try to keep that nice and small, just so you don't get overpowered when you bite into this. And because I've got a fresh cob of corn, I'm going to put that on, and some yummy olives from the markets. So now, like I said, and like I say with every single recipe, the recipe is just a guide. So make it your own, customize it, and as a matter of fact, I would rather you make it different every time you make it. The main reason for that, and you'll probably hear me go on about this a lot, the main reason I find what I work with mums about is that you won't be pulling out your hair because you're missing a specific ingredient, and then you'll be running to the shops, and next thing you know, you've lost an hour. So instead, get the family used to never expecting the exact same version of that meal twice, and then they're always willing to try new things. So it saves you and it saves them for their future because they're more willing and open to trying new things all the time, anywhere in life, not just with food, but pretty much with any other thing in their world. Okay, so we've got our shallots on there. We're gonna put our corn on top and then our olives, and then it's dinner time. Tom's probably getting in the car right now. Okay. Tom, how old are you again? Can you tell us? I can't even keep track. You guys are growing so quickly. All right, now I'm just carving the corn off the cob like this. Some people do it differently, but I find this gets me the most yield out of my corn. Probably better with a nice small knife like that. This is really good to put in your stock, your broth, homemade broth in the slow cooker. So that's a veggie scrap that can go into the slow cooker if you're making your own broth. Let's put some corn on top. And I'd love to hear if there's any other layers that you think of. You might not be doing them tonight, but any other layer ideas that you can think of that you would put on here. So there's been times where I would have put shrimp. You can definitely, if you're having cheese, you can put cheese. You could try something different, go goat's feta maybe instead of a cow's cheese. You can just, like I said, do different sauteed veggies. At the end of the day, this is your dip. All right, and last but not least, my favorite, some nice big juicy olives. These got a bit of a kick to them already. So we're gonna do maybe a combination of green and black. The green ones present beautifully on here. And we'll just give them a nice thin slice so they can go on top. So however many you love, or if you don't love them at all, that's okay too. See if we can do 2 at once, just some nice thin little rounds. Nicer if they're obviously pitted, that's for sure. And then if you are going to put some capsicum on there, definitely go ahead. I've had a special request tonight to have it without the capsicum, so that is absolutely okay. Like I said, it's your dip. We could put it on parts with the parts that you want to save. Kind of like as a kid, I remember them saying, "Oh, just spit on your bit and nobody will take it." So in this case, you could just put your hot spicy things or your olives on the part that you want. Okay. So aside from the capsicum, like I said, if you want to put that on, go for that. It is definitely traditional in the dish, but otherwise, we're pretty much done. You could top it off now with a bit of fresh herbs if you still have those in your garden or on hand. Jalapeno is delicious, and they are kind of available at the moment too, either the pickled version or the fresh version. But otherwise now, as far as serving this, generally speaking, meal or party thing, I like to put a big bowl of organic corn chips if you can, alongside with it. And if you want to get really fancy, then you can do like you've probably seen in the photos that I've got. And for a party, you can just pile a bunch on either around the edges or in the corners and serve it like that. So how'd everyone go? I want to see photos and I want to see your creation. Denise, you bought a Bulgarian white goat cheese. Huh, interesting. That sounds cool. All right, wow, Tom, you're 5 already? Wow, time goes fast. It just goes crazy. Okay, so there's our 9-layer dip, 10-layer dip, whatever you're making tonight. Point and moral of this story is that hopefully you can see that you can customize anything. The recipe is just a guide, and also how easy it is to pull together something that is definitely a complete meal. We've got tons of protein in this, for those of you believe it or not. You know, the beans, the rice, the cashews, the avocado, healthy fats, lots of flavor, lots of nutritional variety. So yes, enjoy, and thank you very much for coming to cook with me, and please show me all your photos and let me know if you have any further questions. Thank you, and see you next time.